Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dev Roulette. This is our second episode. If you missed the show last week, you may be a little confused about what's going on here. Of course, this view you've had our mystery guests for this week revealed. But the idea of Dev Roulette is that we have a couple mystery guests, and this week they're once again focused on CSS. And we're going to get all set up here to have a conversation. And right now, the topics are still a mystery to everyone. So, I'm going to introduce our guests for today. First up, we have Bramus Van Damme, who is a freelance web developer from Belgium. And I'm going to get some of his links popped in the chat, his website and his Twitter. And Bramus, what would you like to share about yourself? I know you enjoy kind of creative coding, it seems like, and I appreciate your evaluations of new specs and things like that. So what else would you like to share about yourself?
Whoa. Well, I stumbled into the web when I was 14 years old. That was like in 1997. So it's a long, long, long time ago. And I got intrigued by it. So I've been tinkering with it ever since. And I did like a detour from front end to back end and now back to front end. Then the main idea that just keeps on, that does it for me is just, it's the web and it's fascinating. It's always new stuff, always evolving. And the things we can do today compared to back then, yeah, it keeps me going.
Awesome, awesome. And also joining us is Michelle Barker, who is a lead front-end developer at Atomic Smash. I'll get her links in the chat as well. And at least from my perspective, Michelle, you're also a creative coder. In particular, you're always blowing me away with your demos that involve math and geometry and I guess trigonometry most recently, and anything else. And also, a fellow 11D fan, which I appreciate. But yeah, anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think you've kind of covered most of it, really. So, aside from being a bit of a creative coder and tinkerer with CSS in my spare time, I also have a blog called CSS in Real Life, which I kind of write up all the things I'm learning about web development. It's kind of almost like a stream of consciousness, really. It's just like every time I learn something, I want to write about it for myself. And because I think, if even just one person learns something from it, then it's useful. Yeah, and I just really love writing and playing around with like new CSS specifications and that kind of thing.
Love it, love it. So, the other thing I try to do with this show is I definitely want to pair people who have a little bit in common, so we can have a nice overlap of topics and a, productive, enlightening conversation. So, I was super pleased when you both happened to pick this date. So, I'm looking forward to our conversation today. So, if you haven't got a chance to check out the show details or maybe missed the one from last week, I'm going to quick provide the info about the show in the chat. But yeah, the idea is that we're going to have just a conversation about some fun topics. So, I'm going to switch over to our wheel for today. And a motion warning on this, it will be spinning. And I believe that this stream will pick up that motion. So, when you hear me say I'm going to start the stream, just a forewarning on that motion there. So we're going to go kind of in order that we have of Bramus and Michelle on the listed here on our video. So Bramus, you'll be our first spin today. So get ready to tell me stop and we'll see what topic we get. So I'm going to start the spinning now.
And stop, I guess.
Ooh. All right, smack in the middle of the topic. Why do you do it? So why do you code with CSS? Why do you promote it? Or anything related to uh, why you do web development, really?
Yeah, it's a very good question. To answer it, I'm going to answer it like in two parts. Like the first one is the blog, which Michelle already mentioned. It's like mainly a backlog for myself. So if I discover something or I learn something new, it's like in me to write it down somewhere and share it with other people. As Michelle said, if it helps one person out there, it's great. And And also it's for me myself, like if I'm in a new project, I'm like, okay, I did that a few years ago, and then I know I can find it back on my blog, and there is a thing. So it's mainly a backlog for me, but also just to share the knowledge, because there's so much to learn nowadays regarding CSS. It evolves very, very fast. So it's good to get the word out, to get people excited about features. So that's like the second reason for the blog part. And then why do I do web development? Well, yeah, like I said, I discovered it when I was 14, and it fascinates me. Back in the day, you had like table-based design and things like that, and then CSS came on. I was like, whoa, you can style websites using some other code, non-HTML, and then you can flip the layout just by changing the CSS. And then JavaScript came along with that. So yeah, it excites me that you can continue on and on and on into web development.
Awesome. Michelle, how about yourself?
So I definitely identify with what Bramus was saying about being able to refer to your own blog posts, because that's something I do all the time. When I've forgotten how to do something, I check whether I've written a blog post on it. So in regards to why I do web development, so I started basically I used to be an illustrator and designer, and I wanted to build my own portfolio website, and to do that I had to kind of learn to code. But first of all, I was using Dreamweaver. This is when I just graduated, making a super old school website out of tables or whatever Dreamweaver used to do in the background, and not knowing very much code at all. And as the years went on, I kind of just learned a little bit more with each iteration of my website, and I ended up getting kind of more interested in the coding and the building the website than I was in really doing design and illustration. So eventually I kind of made that leap and just kind of went wholeheartedly into front-end development. And for me, it's like the perfect intersection between creativity and code and technical things. It's like there's so many creative possibilities with like CSS and with JavaScript as well. And yeah, like it really seemed like a lot more exciting for me. And the other thing is like I find like there are so many kind of little wins when you're doing web development. I felt like when I was doing illustration and design, I would be plugging away at something for a really long time, and I was never satisfied with it until it was completely finished and I could look back on it and go, okay, yeah, that's a good piece of work. But with web development, I find like I can just spend like half an hour really getting my head into a problem, and when I like solve that problem, it's like a really great kind of sense of victory for me. So yeah, that's kind of what keeps me at it really, and what I love about it.
Awesome.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, same for me. Yeah, the reason I 100% identify and have joked about it in the past with writing things not for other people but for myself. So definitely love the problem solving, and the instant gratification was definitely what hooked me from the start and keeps me going too. Awesome. Well, that was an awesome way to start out. So Michelle, you're up. And again, for those who just joined, a motion warning as I spin this wheel, but I'm gonna start the spin now.
Stop.
All right, our next topic is CSS Layout. So whether that's, really anything that brings to mind for you is open for discussion.
Cool. Do you want me to start?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Cool. Well, actually, CSS Layout was kind of one of the topics that really got me into blogging and speaking about CSS. And this was years ago, before grid layout became a thing that we could all use. So when I kind of learned how to code, the one thing that seemed super weird to me was CSS Layout. And I was like, what? So you float a thing over there, and then your stuff has to wrap around a thing, and you have to use what, a clear fix? What is that? And coming from a kind of print design background, that's just seemed completely like ridiculous to me. Like that was one thing I was just like, why is this a thing? And I discovered, Miriam Suzanne built this Suzy grid system, and that kind of like solved all my layout problems for a while, which was awesome. And then CSS grid came along. So obviously we have Flexbox as well, which really, helped things a lot. And then grid came along, and that seemed like this should be the way to do layout on the web. This just solves everything kind of thing. But then of course we now have even more things to play with, and we have like container queries coming up now. Hopefully pretty soon we'll be able to use those. And I know like that's got a lot of people really excited at the moment, because I don't know, for anyone who is not familiar with it, we can essentially, with container queries, instead of a media query, you might have some kind of component have its layout respond to the viewport size. We can actually allow them to respond to the size of the container or the size of the parent element that they're in. So that's pretty huge. I'm ashamed to say I haven't really played around with container queries yet, and I kind of almost feel like it's been like something that's talked about for so long that we just have like so many other ways of like solving that problem, or like workarounds for that problem, because we it's been kind of a bit of a pipe dream. So it may be a little while before we start to see them in production, but I think it's like super cool that we're finally getting container queries on the web.
Yeah. No worries if you haven't played with it yet, because I think it's going to be a long time until the spec is like finalized, and now it's merely a prototype. So we still have time to check it out, and things will like settle a bit because the spec is still changing. I was just away on holiday for a week, and I was hoping like if I come back, let's hope the spec hasn't changed, because otherwise, and that kind of makes it hard like to follow up. So if you want to like be there at the front of the container queries part, you can follow it every day, but there's no real need to it. You can just wait a few months and then just look like, okay, what came out of it? What came out of all this? And then learn the final syntax that comes out of the spec. So no worries there.
Cool. Yeah, that's what I'm waiting for.
Good point. And how about yourself, Bramus? Anything at all related to CSS layout? It's wide open.
Yeah, I used to be in education, so I used to be a teacher at a technical university here in Belgium, and I was responsible for the web courses, of course. And what I found very interesting is in the very beginning, we were all teaching CSS layout, and you have to float and the clear fix and things like that. Which then became easier because you had like the double colon after, like the pseudo element, and then you can do display table on it or stuff like that. That was the latest version of the clear fix. But then one year we just decided like, hey, let's just skip on that and immediately go with Flexbox and grid layout, which made it somewhat easier for the students because they didn't have all this like excess baggage that they had to drag along. We just said like, hey, Flexbox and grid, those are the things you need. But it also made it more difficult for them because to understand Flexbox and to understand grid, it's way bigger than simple floats. You could float left or right, and that was it, and then do the clear fix. But with Flexbox, you have way more layouts. So that was like a good thing and both a bad thing for them. But nowadays, DevTools have caught up. Like you have these really nice options in DevTools nowadays that you can quickly just click on a thing, on a property, and then you can change the align items property, do flex start, flex end, quickly change it, and you get the visual result immediately. So that's it made it kind of fun and way more easy to work with layouts, I think.
I'm interested to know, Bramus, is a float something that you would still teach as a method of doing layout, or would you just teach them as like this is how you kind of wrap text around an image and that's what it's for and that's it?
Yeah, we just use it for one occasion. It is like if you have an avatar somewhere with a piece of text next to it, then you can float the image to the left. But again, you can also do that using Flexbox. Give the flex direction row, and then you put the image on the left, and then the text goes on the right. So
Yeah, I guess the big difference is if you want it to wrap around, right?
Yeah.
And
So that would
also
be the only use case that I still use it nowadays. Otherwise, I don't do floats anymore.
No, I very rarely float anything these days. But the other thing is, like, the CSS shapes specification really depends on floats, and it seems really weird because we're just not using them for layout really, hardly ever. Like you say, like a lot of the time, if you want like some columns or something, you do flexbox or grid instead. I would like to see like CSS shapes like be able to be kind of implemented somehow with grid or flexbox. I don't know how plausible or possible that would be, but it seems like there should be a better way to be able to use them.
Yeah, that's super fascinating. Good points. I often get asked, you know, should I use grid or flexbox? And a lot of folks like to explain that as like 1D or 2D layout. And I initially started explaining it like that, but to me it's more about what level of squishiness do I need out of this layout?
Mm-hmm.
And to that point, floats was like the ultimate squishiness, but we definitely gained benefits, of course, from Flex and Grid, where you could kind of mix some squishiness with some rigidity. So it's been a fun evolution. But I agree. Shapes and maybe sometimes images, very occasionally, I would reach for a float.
Yeah, and now we have gaps in Flexbox, which I think is like supported in some browsers already. So I feel like a lot of the stuff that maybe, or some of the stuff that maybe I would have done in Grid before, because Grid is just so easy to do gaps or like if you need space between your grid items, it's just super easy with Grid. So I would probably like reach for Grid ahead of Flexbox. But now that Flexbox has gaps, like I'm kind of a bit more likely to maybe use it for one-dimensional layout because I can just be like, okay, cool, just gap 20 pixels, whatever.
Really good point. I found myself having the same kind of flip between with Gap and Flexbox now available.
Yeah, cool. I don't know if like I feel like maybe Firefox doesn't have support for it yet, and maybe some other browsers.
It was supported in all browsers nowadays. Before,
is it?
Yeah, I think Safari was the latest one. I don't know exactly, but I think Safari was kind of the latest one.
Okay, yeah.
Because let's just check. Can I use? Can't check it.
Well, the problem is because like Gap is supported in Grid, it's really hard to test for, isn't it?
Yeah, there's
because you can't do like @supports.
You can't do it. You can do @supports, but the two properties are evaluated individually. So you can't say like, hey, do you support display flex with Gap? You can't do the width part. It says, oh, I know display flex. Oh, I know Gap, but not a combination of both.
Yeah, it's fun to watch that all evolve, and again, we're gonna see that it's one of many evolutions we have. But I think we have an opportunity to talk about that maybe with our future topic.
Was the last one. So Gap for Flexbox is supported to Safari 14. It says here on Can I Use. So every browser should support it. Well, except IE11, of course, but
right.
That doesn't count.
Awesome. Well, shall we move on to a new topic? I believe, Bramus, I'll give the spin back to you. So, all right.
Go ahead.
Right. Your motion warning again for the spin. I'm going to start it now.
And stop.
All right. Awesome. Our next topic is creative CSS. And Bramus, you can go ahead and start with that one.
I think it's a difficult one because for me, like all code that you write is part of the creative process. But then I do know that you have like this next level of CSS because sometimes I think like, oh, I know CSS quite well to my own understanding. But then you see people like Leah Veru, James 0x57, and other people talk online. And a tutor is also a person who comes to mind. And then you see their CSS code and you're like, yeah, I don't know CSS. This is a whole other level. Lots of maths involved. I see from their demos all the time. So it's Amit Sheen, who's also in the chat here, by the way. He also makes crazy demos. And I'm like, wow, that's really creative. And the cool thing about the creative part is that, like, most of the time we're sometimes abusing some features of CSS, like the thing with custom properties. They've opened up a lot of stuff. And they all feel like hacks, but yeah, they kind of work. Like, for example, the space toggle trick, where you can give a custom property a value of just a space. So you have dash dash, the name of your property, colon, and space, and then a semicolon. Or you can set it to initial, and using that you can do like toggles, like you can flip it on and off. It's amazing stuff, and it's not that the spec authors thought of in the beginning, like, hey, we can use it for that, but now it comes to mind, and it's this whole creative process of several people online who are working together and all picking ideas from each other, like, hey, I'm going to iterate again on that idea and combine it with another idea, and then you have cool demos.
Yeah.
And you too, for example, Stephanie, the demos you make, I'm something like, wow, that's cool.
Well, thanks. I usually take more of the practical in, but occasionally try to do something fun. But yeah, Michelle, we know you have some very creative ones. For anybody, I'm gonna pull up your code pen. For anybody that has not explored what Michelle has. I'll work on getting that link, but go ahead and you can start talking.
Cool. Yeah, that I was gonna say that that hack with the custom properties with the empty space, that just like makes my brain hurt. I'm like, I haven't been brave enough to go down that road yet, because I'm just like, I feel like I would come back to my code and be like, what have I even written? I don't know what this is. But it's super cool anyway. And yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, like Amit Sheen is doing absolutely like incredible stuff with CSS, like that is just blows my mind. Yeah, there must be like so much maths involved with that, like proper kind of 3D things with CSS that make my brain hurt. But yeah, like I really love
CSS can do that, the whole 3D thing. It's wow.
Yeah. And it's stuff that, like, yeah, you would just like probably never ever use it in production really, but this stuff is like super fun to play around with, and it's great for kind of improving your understanding of CSS as well, and just getting to know kind of new specifications, new properties. But yeah, like I really love just like if I have a spare half an hour or something, just kind of hacking together some kind of demo. It just sort of scratches my creative itch. One thing I've been playing around with quite a bit like recently is like Houdini, like the app property is the new like syntax for like, you know, you can register a property in CSS. So like something that is, you know, maybe not usually animatable, like I mean the kind of classic one is like a gradient value, like a like the angle or the color or the gradient stop or something like that, and you can now like animate them with CSS using Houdini. So yeah, I've done like a few demos, I think recently, like probably most recently is like a rainbow one that kind of all these rainbows kind of just jump in and out of existence, which is using like no elements at all. It's just a background gradient that's animated, and I really love like doing stuff like that, and just kind of seeing how far I can push it, like if can I do something with, you know, the fewest amount of elements possible, or can I do something, you know, without using Sass at all? How far will just CSS get me on its own? Yeah, and to me it's just like really fun to do. And there are also
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that there's also obviously like people like kind of creating that amazing like CSS art, which I definitely like haven't gone down that route. Like I feel like mine is a lot more kind of sort of maths and like graphic designy type stuff, but there's people like making whole illustrations and like kind of amazing games and animations out of pure CSS, and that yeah, that just blows my mind.
Yeah, I love it. I just wanted to interject. I'm going to pull up that rainbow one. So motion warning for sure. As we open that one, so I'm going to open that one right now, and yeah, it's the radial gradient mask with Houdini. Is that the correct one? That's the one I have open.
Maybe. Let me find that.
Well, either way, this
I
one's
have
very
so
cool.
many. I like my profile confuses me because I have so many like private pens. So for,
sure.
like if for stuff that's already in still in development, I haven't shared. So I have to scroll way back to get to the ones that are actually public.
Love it. Well, folks, I popped that link in the chat, and definitely you want to spend some time absorbing what Michelle has out here, but definitely.
It's also a great thing to do is go to CodePen and then click on the trending tab, I think is the name, and just flick through what's trending, and you have amazing demos in there. It's like, what? And then you have the source also available, so you can check it out. Like, how does it work? And sometimes I find myself like way down this rabbit hole to see how does it work? Then it turns out that there's 2 lines of CSS somewhere that are the key to the whole demo.
Yeah,
crazy what we can do with it.
Yeah.
And I have to say actually that one of the things that is like I feel is so kind of freeing with CSS and makes it so much more possible to do all these kind of creative demos is custom properties. And I would say like pretty much all of my creative demos use custom properties in some way, and I'm finding like new reasons to use them all the time. And I feel like for me, it's definitely kind of made CSS that much more fun.
Well, we might spin to that topic.
Oh yeah, sorry, I've already.
No, you're good. I'm loving this conversation. I'm loving, I'm definitely I'm enjoying the conversation. I'm sure that our chat is too, and we're here to have a conversation, so it's okay if we go a little on tangent. So love it. But yeah, shall we see what we get for our next topic, Michelle?
Sure. Oh, is it my go? Okay.
Yes. All right. I'm starting the spin now.
And stop.
Oh, we hit CSS layout again, so we'll do a respin. All right. I'm going to start it again.
Stop.
Oh, we did. We're the wheels waited today. All right. One more time. Let's see. Okay, here we go.
Stop.
All right. Well, a little bit of a segue from our last topic, but the topic is favorite flourishes. So we talked about creative coding in general, but is there something this could mean like something you usually do or something you find to be just a fun technique that you use a lot or you like to share with other folks?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I have like one kind of favorite thing I can pick out. Like one thing that I quite like doing at the moment is using CSS masks. So as I mentioned earlier, you can like animate gradients using Houdini, and you can also use a gradient as a CSS mask. So that's kind of basically can allow you to like show or hide part of an element, and then if you're animating that mask, you can make some pretty cool effects. So that I've got one on my personal website. It's michellebarker.co.uk, and it's like a kind of spotlight effect that animates in, and that's just I think the like initial transition is like triggered with JavaScript for the timing, but it's the animation is all like CSS. So that's something I just like really like playing around with in my kind of creative demos. And the other thing is that springs to mind from the topic is it like again with Houdini, and I had a blog post on this recently, is being able to animate actual text underlines, and I use this quite often when I'm building websites in my job now, just being able to kind of fade in an underline like on hover or whatever, and so that's using text decoration color and sometimes text decoration offset. So I'm doing that on my blog as well on some of the pages. Like if you hover over a link, the underline actually moves down, and rather than that being a border or a gradient or something like we might have used in the past, that's an actual underline because we can animate these properties now. So yeah, I just quite like, you know, little things in CSS that enable us to kind of implement like cool little tricks like that.
Yes, and just so you know, I pulled up your site while you talked about that and showed that off, and then now I have your article about animating underlines up on screen, and I'm just hovering over the CodePen demos, so folks can see what you're talking about there.
Ooh.
Awesome, very cool stuff. What about yourself, Bramus?
I like that post, by the way, by Michelle. I also linked to it from my blog, so it was worth the link. I like it a lot. I kind of had like this endeavor into scroll-linked animations since early January after Adam Argyle tweeted about it. You should follow him, by the way, on Twitter. At Argyle Inc. is his name is his handle on Twitter. And it's amazing what we can do with it. So every time that I have like a spare moment, I try to like make a small demo or something like that. And the demos just keep on coming. It's an amazing spec. Unfortunately, it's Chromium only. You need Canary, I think, or it's behind the feature flags. It's unstable already, but behind the feature flag. And other browsers are not really following at this time, but the specification is really amazing because for the people that don't know it, it allows you to link CSS animations. So the CSS animations that we already know, that we can link them up to our scrolling position. So instead of a clock that is ticking every second or every millisecond, that drives the animation, it's your scroll position that can drive an animation. And it's amazing stuff because we all used to use Java. Well, we still do nowadays, but all solutions nowadays rely on JavaScript. They block the thread. You need to do some hacks to have it run off main thread and things like that, or it's not even possible. I don't know. Perhaps with request animation frame, you can have it like working very good. But this whole new specification, it's really cool, and it kind of like it totally dragged me, and I dove into the subject, and I just tried to make some demos to understand it, to better understand it, because the first time I read the spec, I was like, I don't understand it. I saw some demos too, I was like, what? But then that's like a fun exercise for me. You have this problem, and then I try to dissect it in several small pieces, and I understand like one small part, and then a moment later I understand another part. And then 1 week later, I was like, okay, these two, you can combine them, and then you get this result. So yeah, kind of like that. Just in my spare time, take some problem or something from CSS I don't understand entirely, and then try to make a small demo out of it.
I love it.
Mainly on CodePen.
Yes, love it. And while you're talking, I linked to your CSS Cafe talk on scroll animation, and then also landed on your article about it and showed the demo of the stacking cards and the cover flow. So that link is in chat as well for other folks to check out later.
The first time I read about that was on your blog, Bramus, and that was like so exciting. I can't wait till that's like a thing that we can use.
Yes.
Let's hope other vendors follow suit, and that we have it in Safari and we have it in Firefox too, and then we can work with it. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, awesome. Well, interesting. I'll have to check. I actually have this pulled up in Chrome Canary, so I must need to enable that. One more step to enable that. Perhaps.
You need to enable a feature flag for it. It's experimental web platform features. That's the one I think you need to enable, and then it should work.
All right. We'll have to check that out later, because I definitely, I'm super intrigued by it. It's fascinating that it is going to be a native capability. And it'll be fun to see what folks come up with for sure. Bramus, if you're ready, I'll start the wheel. Here we go.
Spin it. And stop.
Ooh, we're on the line. I'm going to go above the line because we did the below the line topic. Anyway, so I think it's a good one to end on, especially given what you just talked about. So progressive enhancement.
I'm all in for progressive enhancement. I think it's way to make your website. I have a bit of, yeah, I think I have an advantage here because I'm quite old when it comes to web development. So I started off with HTML and then CSS and then JavaScript. Um, Jeremy Keat has been talking a lot about it. I don't know if he coined the term or he has been a real advocate about it. And that was in like the early, late 2000s, early 2010s. You could see him at like a lot of meetups around here in Belgium and Holland and things like that. And to me, it just feels natural. So yeah, progressive enhancement, do it. But then on the other hand, like nowadays, people who start with web development, they stumble in it from the whole other side of the spectrum. So they didn't go through the HTML, CSS, JavaScript pipeline. They just stumbled into React and Babel and all the other technologies that come along with it. And it's hard like to unlearn them what they are learning now. And like these boot camps, they just say, oh, in 10 days you can be a web developer. But then it turns out they learn you JavaScript and Next, and then you forget about the basics. I've seen people do like all sorts of crazy stuff to change the page. It was like, yeah, but you can use a link for that, href, and then you have another page. And then when you tell them, you're like, wow, is that true?
Yeah,
So
and
yeah, progressive enhancement.
yes,
Do it.
and real quick, we did have a question to essentially define progressive enhancement. I'm happy to do that as well, but if either of you want to uh, kind of define what that means, we should share that as well.
Well, to me, it means like you start with a basic layer, and then you every time you enhance it. Like for example, with HTML, with a website, you start with the content. The content is the most important stuff. And then you add visuals to it, like the colors and the layout and things like that. So that's another layer of enhancement. And you can add an extra layer on top of that. That's the interactivity. You can use JavaScript for it. For example, if you click on an item, then the carousel opens, for example. So that's an enhancement. But you always start with the default state. So you have the title and the content that goes on with it. Then using CSS, you color it. And then if JavaScript is enabled, you can collapse them by default. And then if you click on it, you can open them up. So these are all layers that stack onto each other. So you enhance the page, you make it richer per layer that's on top of it. I hope that's a good explanation, or you have a similar idea about it.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that kind of what you first talked about kind of reminded me of um, for myself, viewing, we talk about learning the basics, but I think that being able to specialize as a front end developer, when you actually get the opportunity to specialize front of the front end, I should say, um, you, I think those folks tend to have a little more empathy towards the user, and that's really what progressive enhancement is. I think when it boils down to it, so being able to provide, a legible, consumable experience, not block somebody from getting their task done, but not necessarily saying, no, we can't do the latest and greatest either. We just need to approach it a little more carefully and make sure that if we're doing something that uses like custom properties, but we still have to support a little bit older browsers for now, are we appropriately like making sure it's not a completely broken experience for those folks for now, So I think we're going to start seeing kind of a new wave where we have to consider that with things like container queries, which container queries themselves, just a quick thing, are kind of can gracefully, progressively be an enhancement, which don't want to dive into that topic quite too much right now because we're almost out of time, but it'll be interesting as we get some of these new things and how we're going to, I predict revisiting that topic and as we try to approach what is coming in CSS, which there's a lot of really awesome new stuff. But I want to give Michelle an opportunity to tag on any last thoughts on progressive enhancement as well.
I don't have a lot to say on progressive enhancement. I very much agree with what the two of you have said about it so far. I think there are certain aspects of like CSS in particular that make it easier to do progressive enhancement now. Like we have feature queries, so we can check in our CSS whether a property is supported in a particular, it is supported by the browser the user is using, and deliver them some different CSS if it's not. And also we're seeing things like with the grid specification, a lot of browsers moved to support that like at the same time. I think within a couple of weeks it had near universal support. So it's great to see kind of browsers working together on that stuff. I think when it becomes harder to do progressive enhancement is so when you have to support much older browsers like IE, because we're getting all these new amazing CSS features, modern browsers are moving further and further away from that IE 11 and below kind of baseline. By the day almost. It's almost like in space where like the stars are like receding at an ever increasing rate. So like if you have to support older browsers, it becomes harder to do that. And I definitely get the challenges of why people feel like progressive enhancement doesn't work for them, because if I would say it could basically double your development time if you have to support an older browser like that potentially and cater for every scenario. The other thing is if you are using like lots of plugins, I think is potentially a lot harder to do progressive enhancement. So that's whether it's like WordPress plugins. If we build WordPress sites at Atomic Smash, and we try not to use like a load of plugins like that affect our front end code like that, or if you're using like a lot of kind of npm libraries for your JavaScript, and you actually like don't have very easy control over like what how things will work if you don't have JavaScript on, or like if some features aren't supported. And I think like some developers are perhaps used to using something like Modernizer, which will just you kind of fix your CSS code for older browsers, but potentially like have to deliver a lot more CSS to like just to support some old browsers that hardly anyone is using. So I think there are some gray areas where progressive enhancement can actually be very difficult to do that are not, and those things aren't always acknowledged by our community, but we should absolutely be striving for that. And I think actually like the baseline of delivering HTML first, then layering on CSS and images and things like that, and then JavaScript as the kind of final layer on top, like those principles very much stand.
Yeah,
there's this great talk about that. It's called the Design Principles for the Web. It's by Jeremy Keats. And there he uses the term base layers. It's something from a different I think it's from architecture somewhere that they have like these base layers, but you should definitely check it out. I can pop the link in the chat. And in it, he also uses a quote by Derek Featherstone, and I grab to it often, and it goes, in the front-end web stack, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and ARIA, if you can solve a problem with a simpler solution lower in the stack, you should. It's less fragile, more foolproof, and just works.
Love it.
A wonderful quote.
Yes. Need backgrounds and Twitter headers and all the things made out of that. Awesome. Well, I love the conversation today. I think that turned out to be an awesome way to end it too. As we kind of think of all these things we're excited to be doing. And like I said, I predict that being a topic we all start revisiting. To your point, Michelle, I think it will start coming up more in conversation because we want to be able to use scrolling to animations and whatever else. And so how do we consider that kind of in between transition time where some folks won't get that? So cool. Well, thank you so much. I'll give you both the opportunity for any closing thoughts, but then we'll wrap up for today. So go ahead. Michelle, any closing thoughts?
Not really. I'm just like really excited bit about where kind of CSS is going, and hopefully, the topics we've talked about today have given some people a little bit of food for thought. So thank you for having us on. It's been really fun.
Awesome. Thank you. Any last thoughts,
Yeah, I'll
Bramus?
just join in and say thank you for having us. It's great to finally meet you two,
You.
albeit online, but perhaps next time we can meet each other in real life, or some of the viewers too.
Yes.
If you happen to be at the same conference in the
Yep.
future, just come and say hi.
Absolutely. I'm hoping I get an excuse to come over closer to where you're located to a conference someday. Um, so thanks again, everyone, for joining today, and really appreciate the support of this show. And I know you enjoyed our mystery guest from today. So again, stay tuned for Friday's show and a new pair of mystery guests. We focused on CSS one more time for that show. But I think you will absolutely equally love that pair that we have. So thanks, folks, and we will see you Friday.
Thank you.
Bye.